Hi, and welcome everyone. Welcome to the first ever TA Speakers Management Inspire Excellence Speaker Series. I'm so excited to be with you here today. So the purpose of this video series is really to provide value and insights to others while through inspiring excellence with individuals, leaders, and teams to live healthy, happy, and more fulfilled lives. It's also to highlight current and new upcoming speakers in this exciting industry. Today, I am so thrilled to be joined by the amazing Dr. Agnes Wainmain, clinical psychologist and keynote speaker on expectations. She is here today to share with us how expectations drive our decisions, our behaviors, and our goals, and how we feel about ourselves, and how when they're misaligned with our reality, they can prevent us from living healthy, happy, and fulfilled lives and achieving our goals. Please join me in welcoming the one and only Dr. Agnes Wainmain. Hi, Agnes. How are you today?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me, Tammy. I'm so excited to be here and very honored to be your first guest.
Yes, and I'm very excited because when I found out that you talked about expectations, I was like, we need somebody on that because I think expectations do run our lives, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. So why don't we get started? So my first question for you, Agnes, is tell us about the work you do around expectations and why the right expectations in line with our reality matter to live healthy, happy, and fulfilled lives.
So I see my work as bringing awareness to the fact that the wrong expectations could be ruining your life. And I would sometimes say that and be like, oh, I don't want to be dramatic, but I'm embracing it. I'm being dramatic. I want to alarm everyone that the wrong expectations could be setting you up to feel like a failure, to have a lot of disconnect and miscommunication in relationships, to feel that you're not enough. And usually it's not the reality that's the problem, but we just have the wrong expectations. So basically, I'm here to warn you all.
I love that answer. And when you talk about relationships, oh my God, how many of us can relate to with our partners when we expect something of them and then they don't really live up to those expectations?
Yeah. And I often say I used to work with couples clinically. And I often said, like, I'd see relationships like keel over and die in the office because of the wrong expectations.
That's crazy. And it's just something that we can adjust and fix, right? So,
yeah,
and get more aligned. So it's that easy. And we're excited to have you here and learn a little bit more about that. So my next question for you is, can you speak a little bit more about how we develop expectations in our lives and why they are often misaligned with our reality? Like, for example, you coined the term expectation discrepancy syndrome. What is that?
So I did coin that term. So expectation discrepancy syndrome is the gap between our expectations and reality. And within that gap lives shame, criticism, judgment, and not feeling enough. And the way we typically form those expectations is in this very unconscious way that we're surrounded by expectations even before we're born. Our parents, when they find out that they're going to have us, if we're a firstborn, they're probably going to have expectations that maybe we're going to be a certain way. If we're a surprise, they're going to have expectations on the impact that we're going to have on their lives. And then we come into the world and we have not only our parents and our families, but we have society and culture and media-based expectations. So even listening to love songs on the radio, we start developing expectations about how relationships are supposed to be that often not only are unrealistic, but are like kind of dysfunctional. That, we listen to, I'm going to watch every move you make. And it's like, oh, cool, stalking. So that's a healthy relationship. So basically, any source around us, we can be forming these expectations of what reality should be looking like.
And it doesn't always align with our own reality, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would actually argue for the most part, reality and expectations don't align because it's the wrong expectation.
Right. I love that. And we're going to learn a little bit more how to set the right expectations. So tell us a little bit about kind of what you speak to around expectations. So what is your framework? So this is getting into, okay, we acknowledge that we may have the wrong expectations, that they're formed by external sources that may not match our current reality or ourselves, because, you know, it's a comparison society, as we often say, right? So a lot of times our expectations are formed around comparing to others. So I would love to know your framework and what you speak about a little bit more. And what is the CURE, C-U-R-E? What is that?
So most people, when they realize that there's a discrepancy with their expectations and their reality, is that they try to change the reality. Whereas sometimes it's not possible to change the reality, or again, it's not actually what we want. It's not aligned with what we value, what we think is important. It's not what we want. So the expectation cure is shifting that model around, that we're not trying to change the reality. We actually change the expectation. And first we do that by becoming conscious of the expectation, because again, so much of the time, we don't even realize we're trying to meet an expectation. So we really have to become aware of, what expectation am I trying to meet here? The U is we unpack where that expectation comes from. Because most people will immediately say, like, oh, no one else expects this of me, only I expect it, it's my expectation. But when we actually start unpacking the sources of that expectation, it's like, oh no, that actually came from somewhere else. And again, it's not really aligned with what I value. The R in CURE is then we rewrite a new expectation that really does feel better for us. And sometimes that's like rewriting it to match the reality. Sometimes we do have to maybe just tweak the expectation. So we become very mindful of, like, I'm rewriting this expectation for myself more from a conscious and empowered place, rather than passively taking on this expectation. And the E in CURE is then we have to actually execute on this new expectation, which typically involves then communicating that to other people. Because as you were mentioning, you know, expectations in relationships can have such an impact. And this is kind of like the expectation cure. While it starts as a self project, it then starts becoming a group project, because we have to let other people in on our expectations. They need to let us in on their expectations. And so we can't actually do the expectation cure without other people involved.
I love that. So it's like conscious, then because we have to know what they are and like which ones are aligned and which ones are not, and then unpack it. Let's look at it. Let's evaluate that, and then rewrite them so that they're more in line with our reality. And then we execute. I absolutely love that. And I have an example of when I was listening to you in many conversations we had. I have endometriosis. And my expectations, what I realize of endometriosis, is that I can eat whatever the heck I want. And I want to eat whatever the heck I want. And I want to treat, what I mean by that. And so, but what I realized is that's not my reality. And the truth is, I can't change my reality that I have endometriosis. Like, there's nothing I can do about it. It's a chronic condition. But what I can do is I can evaluate what is misaligned. Okay, Tammy, yes, you can't eat chips and all these other fun stuff. You just have to accept that, that's part of my reality, and that I adjust, and I've done that, and it's been really helpful. So thank you for that, because you inspired me, and it really made me realize, it was like a light bulb that went off in my head. So thank you for that. And that's just one example from myself. And so I think that's a good example of what happens when we assess our expectations and realign them, and how that helps us in life. And my last question for you is, I would love to learn from you. Can you give us a good example of a situation that you have been through, or somebody else has been through that where their expectations were not aligned with their reality or yours, and then how, when assessing them, has changed them and has helped live healthier, happy, or more fulfilled lives?
Yeah, so absolutely. So for me, a lot of my expectations have been around my professional identity, that as a psychologist, I felt that there was a certain way that I had to kind of show up and present myself, particularly as I was growing my business, so that I had to be, you know, very formal, that I had to be like, here's my degrees, here's my theoretical orientations. And the reason why I had those expectations when I unpacked it is like, that's kind of what my mentors had done. That was, again, in the media, you know, psychologists are kind of seen as these kind of like we're background. We're just kind of like, we nod, we wear a cardigan,
lie on the couch.
you know, tell me how, you know, and it was causing a lot of distress for me that I had this expectation of who I was supposed to be professionally. And the reality that isn't who I am. You know, I'm quite open about my own experiences. I think I'm really funny, so I'm not going to be like just blending into the background. So then I rewrote, like, I don't have to be a certain way in order to be a psychologist. I can show up as myself. And then, so the more I started doing that, whether it was through blog posts, whether it was interviews like this, you know, I got to create my new expectation that I can actually just show up as me, and that doesn't take away from my professional identity. And I think for a lot of people, they think that they have to show up in a certain way, that there's an expectation of whether it's a psychologist, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's an accountant, whether it's whatever profession, that you have to kind of fit the mold. And that can feel really uncomfortable.
I absolutely love that. So really just you be you.
Yeah.
You know, I love that. Yeah. And I think I think many people can relate to that for sure. It's like, you know, you have to put on this act or like this persona of who you are not. And if you can just accept that and, you know, evaluate that and be yourself, I think people value that a lot more. So well, thank you so much, Agnes. That was incredible. I think you gave us a lot of insights and in different points on, you know, expectations and how we can adjust them and how we can, you know, not cause us distress, because I definitely have had many expectations cause me distress. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing that with us. And if anybody else would like to learn a little bit more about Dr. Agnes or her expectations, you can go to Agnes, Agnes, Wainman, WAINMAN.com and reach out. You can reach out to her on LinkedIn. She would love to chat with you further about it. So thank you very much for taking the time, and we will see you at episode 2.